Hello, my name is Ethan Cosway. I'm a junior at USF. My major is secondary social science education, and I'm trying to become a history teacher. Some of my hobbies are playing basketball and playing video games. And now that I got the introductions done, let's move on to the article and video, and I'll share my thoughts and opinions about them. Now, the first article we're going to talk about is by Kathy Snow. And this article is all about trying to normalize disabilities in society, and they believe using a concept called person first language is a great way to do that. Now, person first language is when you mention the person's name first, then the disability. An example would be this person has a mental health condition. Now, as you can see, you mention the person first, then you mention the disability. And the whole ideology behind that is that if you mention the person first in like any conversation, all of the people's attention and focus would be on the first thing, which would be the person and not necessarily the disability. And the reason why people want to use this type of language is because whenever you put the disability first, it kind of focuses on the disability itself and not the person. And a lot of people don't like being attached of a label that's like a constant reminder how they're really different from a person without disabilities. And they believe if you attach such labels to people when you refer to them constantly, it can bring some negative connotation and stigma to that person, and it can make the person with the disability feel very distant or segregated slash separated with other people in society who do not have disabilities. Now, that being said, let's move on to the second article, which is the one from the American Psychological Association. Now, it does tackle on the same concept of what kind of language to use when talking about people with disability, but also brings up another good insight where they believe you can use the disability as a form of a diversity when identifying someone. For example, they compare it to how it's similar to describing someone's race, ethnicity, religion, and whatnot, which I think is a pretty good way to look at it. Because if you're trying to normalize the concept of disability, putting on the same level of description as someone's race, ethnicity, and religion is a great way to go about it. Now, this article also introduced and talks about the concept of identity first language, which is the complete opposite of the person first language that was previously mentioned in the other article. Now, as it suggests, you mention the disability first, then the person. An example is say a diabetic person, an amputee person, or just simply saying disabled person. As you guess, you mention disability first, then the person. Now, there's pros and cons when you're using these two types of languages, and throughout history, most people have preferred to use person first language rather than identity first language. But there has been some takes on the concept where if people who use identity first language really embraces that with their disabilities, they kind of like are okay with associating themselves with that rather than person first language. The whole idea of it is you're trying to distance the disability away from that person where you don't really want to be mentioned as much with the disability. But in the end, this article pretty much just says that you should just simply just ask the person with the disability what is their preference, which makes sense because that's how it works most things in life. If you're trying to like learn what a person wants or prefers, simply asking them will kind of just you know be the right way to do it. If they prefer person first identity, that's okay. If they prefer identity first type of language, that's okay also. It's, so it's kind of a matter of preference according to this article, but for the most part, I would just stick to person first language. Now, the third article is the one that is the National Disability Rights Network, and it kind of tackles on the same concept, what kind of language to use. This article promotes person first language, kind of the same reasons, because if you're trying to normalize or make disabilities a normal thing in society and not just grand spectacle of a thing, making it simple, clean, clear, and sweet, and not being the focal point is a great way to do that. So, person first language is the most logical method to use if you're trying to achieve that. And this article also says what not to do when you're talking to a disabled person in general, like avoiding terminology such as that would generate self-pity or a negative connotation, such as this person suffers from or is a victim of this disability, because it kind of makes it sound like it's like a really bad disease, which is not, because the whole point of these articles is trying to make disabilities a very normal thing about people's lives. So avoid using type of terminology that might generate some type of negative connotation of self-pity, because like I said previously, it can lead to a person feel very distant from others. And also, this article mentions to avoid certain euphemisms such as the R word, or saying a person's crippled, special needs, handy capable, because, like previously mentioned, this brings more negative connotation, stigma when you describe a person like that. Now, moving on to our final source, which is the TED Talk, which I think is the one of the more interesting ones, because you get to hear from a disabled person about this concept, all these articles we're talking about. Now, this person used an example when she was at a very young age, where she was offered a community award from her community. Now, she thought that was kind of silly because she really didn't do anything. So she brings up a point where she believes disabled people shouldn't really be awarded or like complimented just for simply existing, kind of like the same concept of kind of participation trophy. Rather, the speaker emphasizes that a disabled person should really be applauded for what they're able to do and what they're able to succeed in their life. For to go more in specifics, she believes that how a disabled person finds intuitive and innovative ways to go about their lives and accomplish things. She believes that should be the kind of thing that should be awarded or complimented and or talked about, not just simply just existing. So this speaker believes that standards and expectations should be the same no matter if you have a disability or if you don't have a disability, which I kind of agree with, because if all these sources are leaning towards making disabilities a normal thing that can happen to anyone, putting everyone on the same expectations and level is a kind of a great way to do that, because you're not really giving anyone some type of preferential treatment in a sense. You're kind of seeing everyone in the same light, same spectrum, and the disability is simply just another aspect about that person. Doesn't affect how impressive or of their achievements or accomplishments are. So yeah, those are my overall thoughts about these sources. Please comment below. I'd be very interested to talk about these topics more in depth. So yeah, that's all I have today, and I hope you guys have a good day. Take care.